for shows. Today I'm going to cover the two main disciplines of horses and how to do your horse's mane and tail for each of these. My sources for this presentation are wikipedia.com and horsechannel.com. And the photos that I use in this PowerPoint are from those websites, and I got permission to use them. Okay, so like I said, there's two main disciplines, which are English and Western. English has a braided mane, like you see here. And Western has a banded mane, like this one. Okay, so braid styles. There's three main styles of braids. I can see them on the computer, but it won't. It won't go back.
Here I am. Yes, I see.
Hopefully it'll work this time. Okay, so like I was saying, there's three types of braids that I'll tell you about today. First is the continental braid, which is seen in horses that are required to show with long manes, and this is viewed as stylish in some dressage and flat classes. And it's made with little rubber bands along the mane. Okay, the French or Andalusian braid. This braid is most common in Baroque breeds like the Lipizan, the Frisian, and the Andalusian. That's the name, the Andalusian braid. And this is just a French braid that runs from the beginning of the mane at the pole down to the withers, where the mane ends. And then there's the button braid, which is the most common braid in the United States and United Kingdom, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. This braid is used in show jumping, hunter classes, basically any English event. So when you're going to braid your horse's mane, you want to make sure that you always start with mane that's been freshly washed. You also want to trim the mane down to about 3 inches long. So when you go to start, you're going to need yarn, You want it to be the same color as your horse's mane. I'm going to use a contrasting color so you can see what I'm doing with it. And you'll also need a latch hook or a pair of tweezers, anything that you can use to just grab pieces of yarn, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. It'll be good to have a comb on hand, and you'll also want a hair clip. So when you want to start by making these regular braids down the length of the mane. So as you make you'll separate a section of hair and take your hair clip and clip back the rest of the hair that you're not working with. Then you'll start braiding that section, and it's also good to have a bottle to spray water on your mane because that makes it easier to work with. So you'll spray the section and then you'll braid it. And about halfway down the braid, you'll want to work in about a 5-inch section of yarn. So you'll work in the yarn, and then you'll use the yarn to tie it off. And when you have tied it off, and when you're working with your horse's mane, you always want to start at the top and work your way down to the bottom because of the way the hair grows and the way it lays. So once you've finished doing these braids all down the length of the mane, you'll take your tweezers or your latch hook and you'll stick them through the very base of the mane. And you'll grab the pieces of yarn and pull them up through the base of the mane. You want to try not to pull it so that any hair comes out, sticks out of this other side. And if any does, you can just take a pair of scissors and try and trim it off. So then you'll take the two ends of the yarn and you'll tie it once underneath the braid and then a double knot on top of the braid. And that'll leave you with these little button braids. Okay? So you'll do that down the entire length of the mane. Traditionally, a male horse would have an odd number of braids and a female horse would have an even number of braids. However, that rule is rarely, if ever, used today, so you don't have to worry about that while you are braiding your mane. The more braids that you do, the fancier, but that'll take a little bit more time. So, okay, banding a mane. This is a banded mane, and this is seen in all Western events. So what you'll need, again, you'll want to start out with a freshly washed mane. You want to make sure you don't have any styling gel or detangler or any horse hair products in the hair because that'll make it harder to separate and to style. You'll also need small elastic bands, which you can find at tack stores, which are made especially in horse hair colors. Again, you'll want it the same color as your horse's mane, but I'm using contrasting colors again. You'll also want a comb and the hair clip. And again, it's good to have a spray bottle to wet down the mane as you go. So how you band the mane is you separate small sections and you'll use your hair clip to clip back the rest of the hair so that you don't get any more into your braid, and that'll help keep it neater. And as you do this, you'll want to make sure that you pull the hair down, that way it'll lay flat. See, some of these braids are kind of standing up. I think that's mostly because this is a toy horse that doesn't have a very good mane, but part of that may be that I wasn't pulling it down correctly. So you'll take the rubber band, just like you do in your own hair to make a ponytail. You just wrap it around to make small bands down the entire length of the mane. And then if you need to, at the end, to tighten it, you just pull gently, just push the rubber band up towards the base of the mane. You want to try and get all the sections to be the same length, or the same width, and try to be as uniform as possible. There are two ways that you can do the forelock, which is the lock of hair that grows between the ears. On real horses, more hair grows out to about the middle of the forehead. So what some people will do is take 3 rubber bands and start with the shortest pieces, and then the middle, and then at the end put a rubber band around all of them. And that way it'll lay flatter when you're doing your barrels or your reining classes. Okay? Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the tails. On an English horse, the tail is braided, and on a Western horse, the tail is left natural. It's very hard to recreate these on my toy horses, so I'm just going to show you some slides here. Okay, so when you're braiding the mane for an English horse, you want to start a French braid directly at the base of the tail. Approximately 2 inches from the end of the tailbone, you're going to stop adding more hair, stop French braiding, and just continue a regular braid down to the end of those pieces of hair. And again, you'll want to work in a piece of yarn that's the same color as the tail. So once you've tied off that regular braid, there's 3 ways to finish off the braid. There's the pinwheel, the wrap, and the loop. The pinwheel is the hardest and the fanciest. That's where you take the regular braid and you roll it up and use the yarn to tie it in a pinwheel to the base of the French braid, shown here in the picture. The wrap. This is a trendy style that's becoming more and more popular in some dressage classes. This is where you take the regular part of the regular braid and wrap it around the entire tail. And then this is the loop, which is the easiest style to master. It's similar to what we did on the mane, is you'll take the yarn and you pull it up through the French braid to make that loop and then tie it off with the yarn. A horse's tail contains 18 vertebrae on average, some have more, some have less. And no hair grows on the underside of a tail. So that's what makes it so hard to recreate the horse hairstyles on a toy horse. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Western tails. These photographs were taken by me at the Iowa State Fair on Monday for one of the walk and trot classes. And as you can see, they're very full and beautiful and very thick and long. And how they will achieve that is as soon as you finish washing your horse, you'll take the tail and do it in a very loose regular braid. And then you'll fold the tail up and put a tail bag or a tail sock. Or I've also read that if you're not really into showing horses and you don't want to spend all this money on specialized equipment, you can use a large human sock. And that's just to prevent breakage, and that's to keep the tail clean for a longer period of time. So, in conclusion, with a little practice, your horse can look like a winner. Are there any questions? Yes.
What size sock, or does it have to be special size?
The question was, for the, like I was talking about on the tail, if you're going to use a sock to hold it up, what size works best? And I'd like to thank my father for donating his socks for my horse program. So yeah, a large human sock. Yes.
Does it matter what kind of fabric the sock is?
All the research that I've done, they've never specified a specific kind of sock, so I wouldn't think that it would matter. That's an interesting idea, though. I will have to look into that. Yes. The question was, it looks like on this picture, the button braids don't start right at the top of the mane, and why is that? That's a very good question. Horses, when we go to show our horses, we'll cut what's called a bridle path. That's for the bridle strap that lays behind the ears. We're going to shave off a small section. The breeds like the quarter horse, the paint horse, the Appaloosa horse, they have a very short bridle path of about 2 to 4 inches. Whereas some horse breeds like the Arabian and the Morgan, they're required to show with a 6 to 8 inch long bridle path. So they'll shave all the hair until, right about there. And so they'll shave that off and then they'll style the mane. So that is why the braid doesn't start right at the base of the ears. Any other questions? Yes.
They had some horse events in the Olympics. What kind of braiding did they do for the Olympic horse events?
The question was, they had some horse events at the Olympics, and what kind of braiding did they do at the Olympics? Well, in a dressage class, they would do, depending on the breed, they would do a French braid or they would do button braids. If it was a broke breed, like the Andalusian, the Lipizzan, and the Frisian. Then they would do the Andalusian braid because they're required to show with natural length of mane. If it was, say, a saddlebred or a warm blood, they would show with button braids. And also, I have here a handout that goes into a lot more detail by the breeds and discipline, which I'll hand out at the conclusion of my talk. So then you can look up by your specific breed or discipline, so then you can have more information. Yes.
You said that you left the tail natural because it looked like it was even in the body. So is it natural or is it cut?
That's a good question. The question was, in the photographs that I showed of the western tail, I said that it was left natural, but it looked like it was cut flat across the bottom. And that's called banging, and that is the standard procedure because if you just leave the tail completely natural, it'll be all stringy, it'll have loose ends at the end. And so you trim off the very littlest you can to get a nice flat bottom. And also, most of the horses shown here at the State Fair in the Western events will have tail extensions, which vary in price from about $100 to thousands of dollars for a tail extension. And the tail extensions, you have to look very carefully at your rules because in some shows it will be illegal for you to use those. And in almost every show, it will be illegal to use a weighted one. Some breeders will use weighted tail extensions to help the horse hold their tail straight down. So again, the answer to your question is it's called banging, and that's what you're supposed to do for almost all classes, including dressage and the Western events. Any other questions? Yes, draft horses are much different than, well, the question was, there was a draft horse show here yesterday, and the tails look a lot different. And so, yeah, they're a lot different. The draft horses, in most of those breeds, like the Clydesdale, they'll have a donked tail, which is the amputation of part of the tail. And that was started so that the tail will not get caught in the harnesses. It's kind of a safety procedure. So they'll dock the tail, and then they'll braid what's left, and they'll put ribbons and stuff, and then they'll also do like a French braid on the mane and put those ribbons that stand straight up that you always will see in those draft horse shows. So, yes.
Is that still legal or ethical to amputate the tails?
The question was, is that still ethical or legal to amputate the tails? And it is, it's illegal in 11 states, not yet Iowa, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of animal rights people who think that it should be illegal across the United States because they don't think that's fair to the animals because the horses use their tails for communication and to swat at flies, swat at flies. So a lot of people think that they should leave the tails and not dock them. Yes.
Do you show both Western English and do you have just one horse? Do you do that with kind of change hairstyle or is that one thing?
Okay. The question was, do I show Western and English, and do I have one horse, or do I have more, or do I have to change the hairstyles? At our county fair, they only have Western events, and I got my first horse for Christmas of this year, and I actually have not been able to ride her yet due to back issues, so I haven't been able to show her yet. And if I do show her, I'm not going to show English because she was trained, she wasn't trained for English, so I'm going to just show her in Western events. Any other questions? Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.